Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review for Candyman. Now, you may not know, but each member of the Scream Stream team, what a mouthful, is reviewing this film. So yeah, that's Lee from Drum Dums, Cody Leach, Lindsay from Mother Mayhem, and CP from Willie Screedia, formerly Will I Like It Reviews. Don't know what a Willie Screedia is. So yeah, we're all reviewing it, and here's mine. Now, I really like this film. I like this film quite a lot, actually. I remember seeing it back in the day, not when it came out, but kind of late 90s I saw it, and it made a real impact on me. Coming back to it for this review, I watched it 2 times just before doing this review, and I gotta say, it still has something about it. It's really a fairy tale, like a gothic horror fairy tale, but masquerading as a slasher film. Like, I can imagine the music from Edward Scissorhands maybe playing over this film and it working quite well. The music that we do get actually by Philip Glass is it very much in that vein. It's not the kind of music you would usually associate with this kind of film, with a slasher film I should say. But yeah, it works beautifully, and the little melodies from it really get stuck in my head. I've been singing them for days after seeing this film. There's a few themes that Candyman deals with, and each scene within the film touches upon at least one of these themes in some way, and primarily it's the idea of myths and legends and the power that they have being stored within people's ability to continue fearing them, I guess. You know, like Candyman's MO, so to speak, is to keep that fear alive, so that he remains alive within the community. So when people doubt him, when they stop believing in him, they are given an opportunity to show that by saying his name 5 times into a mirror, and that's kind of like an acknowledgement that, yeah, they don't really believe him, because if you did, you wouldn't say it, would you?
Candyman. Oh, you chicken!
We get a social commentary on the class structure, and the fact that black communities in America tend to be relegated to the slums, tend to be forced that way really with the way that the city is designed, the city is built. And then on top of that we also get a commentary on gender roles and the expectations of people based on their gender. All that plays into this story about, like I say, this myth, this legend. While Candyman is this, this primary mythic figure that everyone fears, the film itself kind of works almost like an origin story for another legend to be, another myth that is being created as we are following this main character, Helen, played brilliantly, I must say, by Virginia Madsen. Now this character is, again, not the kind of lead female character you expect to see in a slasher film. She's got intelligence, she is very independent, she doesn't really spend most of her time talking about boy troubles, boyfriend troubles, things like that. She's got a proper job, she's there to do something. So she's trying to write a paper with her friend. They're university grad students, they are writing a paper on myths, on legends, and they get wind of this Candyman legend down in this slum area, so they go to investigate it, and it's really all about them going where other people wouldn't go. Like, this is a neighborhood where even the police don't really go that much. There's despite this Candyman legend, and despite a local criminal, a gang member kind of taking up this Candyman legend and using it to instill fear in people, they know who this guy is, but they can't go after him because people are too scared. And so, like I say, the police don't even go there. Again, that just feeds into the strength of this female character, this Helen. Her friend as well, Bernadette, she's very reluctant to go. So it really is Helen being this headstrong character, just diving straight in. Her husband is a lecturer at the university, and he kind of has this partner, and there's one moment when he laughs at Helen and Bernadette for investigating this Candyman legend. Because he wrote a paper on it a few years before, and he's a bit of a snob. He's up himself, and he's very down on these two women. And again, that's where the whole gender roles thing comes in, and that strength that Helen has to be able to go into that slum area to investigate the actual locations where this myth is said to exist. Is a place where actually her husband and this guy, they wouldn't go. They wouldn't go there because they're toffs, basically. They'd get spotted a mile off by the local gang members. I like that juxtaposition there, the kind of the rivalry between the guys who think they've got it all sussed and the women who they look down upon as kind of feeble insects in a way. This dinner table scene with the backstory of Candyman, what I like about it is the power of storytelling. The way that Bernard Rose frames the shots, built around this story. He closes in on Helen, as this story gets closer and closer to its climax, and then we're very close up on her face. We get this kind of stream of light across her eyes, and it just brings us into Helen's mindset right now, and just the power of story, the power of myth, of fear, of storytelling, which again is what this film is all about. Xander Berkeley, who plays Helen's husband, is an absolute despicable, horrible person in this. So right off the bat, when we're introduced to this character, you just know this guy is so full of himself. He's coming on to his students, doesn't realise that his wife is watching, and it's pretty evident from fairly early on that this dude is having an affair. So yeah, again, that feeds into the story later on, and I'll get to that when we get to the ending. But there's something I think that's worth touching on with regards to his infidelity, shall we say. Now, it does take a while for Candyman himself to make an appearance in the film. I think it was like around the 40-minute mark when Tony Todd actually arrived. We get one flash of him in the mirror when his legend is being told at the start of the film, but it's literally a flash, blink and you miss it. So yeah, it's a good 40 minutes until we get to him. Now, I think that might put a lot of people off. They may feel that the film's got pacing issues, which is often something people say when really they just find it hard to follow a film that is very well written and very well structured. But yeah, I don't think there are pacing issues with this at all. I think it takes its time to tell a character-driven story, to get us invested in this character of Helen, and to really build the world in which she lives, so that when all the crap starts hitting the fan, we really do identify with her. We feel for her, and we want her to get out. I like that the film plays almost like an investigative journalist style movie. I wouldn't quite go the route of All the President's Men or anything like that, but it does have that feel of what we're actually following here is a journalist uncovering the story. And when she's interviewing different people at the start, we get several interviews, and those different interviews serve to show us the ways in which a folk tale is kind of twisted and changed and adapted just little bits here and there depending on who's telling the story. And that's what folk tales do. They're embellished. People tell their own version of the same story. When Helen and Bernadette get to Cabrini Green, they're confronted by this gang, and you feel the way in which they feel threatened by them. They're quite menacing, they're quite intimidating. But just after that, we get this scene in which they speak to this woman who was the neighbour of this woman who was murdered in the block of flats. And it's a really nice contrast, because this woman says, you know what, those people downstairs, that's not us, that's not everyone here. And then you realise this place where this woman lives is filled with people like her who are just trying to raise their kids, just trying to do right by their families. And it's a small number of people who form these gangs and create this image, this stereotype. Helen shows a great degree of bravery as well throughout these scenes. They go into the apartment where the woman was murdered, and she takes photos. So she goes through this wall where the mirror was in the bathroom, and it's just the skankiest looking set ever. Again, you know, if that was a real situation, ain't no way I'm going in there. No chance. Certainly not on my own to take some photos. And again, it's just that this character, she's a strong woman, she's determined, she's going to get these pictures. Candyman needs people to believe in him in order for his legend to survive. And we see through the character of Helen the way in which his myth can be deflated, can be destroyed, its impact can be taken away. So when she is instrumental in bringing to justice this gang member that is kind of flaunting himself as Candyman, portraying himself as Candyman, it demystifies the myth of Candyman in the eyes of this child called Jake that she kind of befriends. She gets him to show her around Cabrini Green, and he's really scared of this figure, this Candyman figure. So when this gang member is arrested, and Helen kind of tells him, look, Candyman doesn't exist, it's just this dude trying to strike fear into people, and it's in that moment that she has taken away Candyman's power, and it's because of that Candyman then erupts into her life. As he puts it, she's kind of destroyed his congregation, or more to the point, her unbelief has destroyed his congregation. It's from this point that the film really kicks into slasher territory. You know, this is when Candyman goes full throttle, and things seem to go from 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds flat. Helen's life is literally torn apart by this guy. So yeah, he comes to her, she kind of faints, and then from the moment she wakes up, it's basically chaos. Her life is in chaos. She is set up by him for various murders. She comes off as a complete crazy person. She ends up in a mental institution. You know, Candyman kills the doctor who's analysing her. She escapes. It's absolutely crazy from that moment on. And it's in these moments where I really feel for her. I'm so invested in this character at this point because of all the brilliant work they've done setting her up as a believable, viable protagonist that I don't want any harm to come to her. So yeah, great work, I must say, from the script by Bernard Rose to his direction, and the brilliant performance, like I say, the central performance by Virginia Madsen. Tony Todd is really great as Candyman. He doesn't get to do so much as just kind of stand there holding his hook arm and yeah, just kind of being a presence. So it's a good job that he's very good at that. You know, and he's got the right voice for it as well. That voice of his is really menacing, really dark. There's a great piece of dialogue from Candyman at one point when he says to Helen, "What do the good know except what the bad teach them through their excesses?" And that, to me, speaks volumes about, again, mythology and why we tell these mythic stories. You know, we tell fairy tale stories. They're always dark, they're always twisted, they're always about bad people doing nasty things, but they teach us something about how to be good. And it's this idea that actually, in order to have good, in order to be good, in order to know what good is, you need that evil. You need to know the opposite. It's the stories of the boogeyman that keep children on the right track, doing the right thing in some respects. There's a really graphic kill scene with this doctor, Dr. Burke. So this is the guy who is kind of psych evaluating Helen, and Candyman just pops up behind him and literally uses his hook to gut out his back. But again, really great scene, because up until that point you are questioning whether or not Helen is even seeing Candyman, or whether it is all just in her head. Is she crazy? You know, and that could have been a route they could have gone down with the film, is to keep that element. Was it all in her head? Was she really the killer? That kind of thing, you know, and feed into that kind of the power of myth to change the way we think, to change who we are as people. But I think it's from this point on you get to realise that actually, no, she ain't crazy. This dude is real. She's restrained. There's no way she's getting out of them. But yeah, it's just this whole time, every time that he kills someone and she's the only one around, and she's just getting deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, and there's no way people will ever believe her side of the story. It's interesting that in that sequence, Candyman tells Helen that tonight our congregation will witness a new miracle. It's in that moment that you realise, as far as he's concerned, the two of them are one. The two of them are now in it together. You know, he doesn't say my congregation, he says our congregation. It's from here on out that Helen has a choice. She can go with Candyman and be his victim, so to speak, become part of his legend, in order to save this baby, or she can just keep running, which quite frankly isn't much of an option at all, is it? But yeah, so Candyman's holding this baby. You know, he framed Helen for the kidnapping of it, and Candyman says, well, you know, be my victim and I will let this baby go. Before she gets there though, she goes and confronts her husband. Well, she goes to find solace in her husband's arms, shall we say, but when she gets home she finds this student, Stacy, has already moved in and started decorating. It's a really great sequence in which they're really afraid of her, even though they actually have nothing to be afraid of, because she's not done anything, but she plays on that. She realises that actually the power that she has over them because of the fear that this legend has now instilled. During that scene you get a moment of surrender from Helen. There's this little moment where she says it's over, and she's not just talking about her marriage, she's talking about everything. You know, everything she thought she knew, everything she held dear has just gone like that. It's been taken from her, and she realises she's got nothing left. It's from that point on that her main focus becomes saving this baby. In her final confrontation with Candyman, however, she makes a different choice. She denies him. She refuses to go with him, but chooses to save the baby anyway. You know, and she fights back. She kills him. You know, this being a horror film, we know that, you know, they can always return, and we also know we got sequels after this, so hey ho. But at the time this was made, you know, if you take this film on its own terms, she kills him, and essentially crawls through fire in order to bring this baby out. And in so doing, she creates her own legend. She creates her own congregation. You know, this is no longer Candyman's congregation. It's no longer his myth or legend that is going to be kind of held in regard in these people's eyes. It's hers. She essentially adopts that power, that kind of that mythology has to keep her alive. So when she returns at the end of the film in this scene with her husband, she comes back and she takes a revenge on her husband. She's able to do that because of, one, the power of belief that her congregation has, and also the lack of belief that her husband had in her and in their marriage. And this is the point I was talking about earlier with regards to his fidelity. He didn't believe in their marriage. He didn't believe in her. He didn't believe in them. And I think that combination of, you know, the myth that is now created around her because of all those people who saw what she did and hold her in that regard, coupled with his disbelief in her, in them, in their marriage. You know, he was never really faithful. He didn't treat their marriage with the respect that he should have done. And that all works together, feeds into this kind of bringing her back to take her revenge. It's a really great story. It's a really great horror film. Like I say, for me personally, it's a cut above most, simply because of the amount of depth they give to the central character, and the way in which these different themes pop up throughout the whole film, each scene. I love the investigative journalism side of it, the way the layers of the onion are peeled back slowly. I love it. And when the horror hits, it hits quite hard, again, because of that investment in characters. You know, I recently saw Black Xmas, not Black Christmas, the far superior film, but the remake, Black Xmas. I had no investment in any of the characters. So to me, none of the horror hit me that hard. I thought it was disgusting. When I looked at it, it was disgusting, but it didn't hit me on an emotional level because I wasn't invested in the characters. I didn't care. I do care here. This is a film that makes me care about its central character, and it gets huge brownie points for that. Yeah, so final grade, what would I give Candyman? I've thought about this quite long and hard. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I know I've not really given any downsides to the film, but I think if you want some, I'd say that sometimes the budget lets it down a bit. Sometimes the special effects are a bit hokey. Sometimes I think Candyman's dialogue can be, even though there are some real nuggets in there, which I've already pointed out, sometimes his dialogue can be a little bit cringy. He doesn't go quite to the length of Basil exposition, but there are times when his lines of dialogue feel, very clunky is the best word I could use for it. Beyond that, I think this is one of the best slasher horror films you're going to find. But what about you? Have you seen Candyman? If so, what did you think about it? Comment below, let me know, and until next time, cracking.